No introduction needed. We know who this gentleman is. Mr. John Cleese.
Thank you, Betsy. I should explain that I'm sitting here because I'm very, very old. And my right ear is better than my left, so I have to have him on this side, you see. Oh, yeah, I was 85 on Sunday. Can you believe that?
Oh, happy birthday. Right.
It's kind of easy being an entertainer when you're 85 because you get a round of applause for being able to breathe. This is Betsy.
My name is Betsy now. So, and when this gentleman renames you, you happily take it. You do not argue with it. Thank you so much for being here this weekend and for being here in the room.
I am being paid. I want to put your minds at rest, because there's a lot of people out there wondering if I've come here on my own goodwill.
You should be paid very well. And if not, ask for more.
Oh, okay. All right.
There is a microphone. There is a microphone in the center of the room, so if you do have questions for John, you can line up behind the microphone and we'll get to them as we progress through. But I'm wondering if maybe you would allow me to kind of just regale you with a little personal story to kick things off?
No, I don't think
That's
so.
fine. We can move on to the questions.
I think hands up if you think that's a really bad idea. Well, all right, hands up if you think it's quite a good idea.
I didn't even put up my own hand for that one.
All right, we'll let you have that one.
So I'm a huge fan of comedy. It's one of the reasons why I'm just honored to share the stage with you right now.
I'm very honored indeed. This is the high point of your miserable life.
No, You're probably not far from wrong. So it's quite okay.
Well, you are Jewish, aren't you? The funniest people in the world are Jewish people. My son-in-law is Jewish, is Ed Solomon, who wrote Men in Black, right? And he tells me the best Jewish jokes. Here's the best one: is a mother, Jewish mother, on the beach with her little boy, right? And they're having a wonderful time. It's a beautiful, beautiful day. And all of a sudden she sees something in the distance. She thinks, what that? It's a funny wave. And it starts building up and building up and building up. And suddenly the wave comes up and lands on the little boy who's sitting right next to his mother and sucks him out to sea. And the mother goes, oh God, what are you doing? What are you doing? Give me my little boy back, please. And the little boy is exactly where he was 10 seconds before. And the mother looks at him and says, he had a hat.
Definitely the highlight of my miserable panel career. I'm okay. So it's very rare that things ever make me laugh so hard that I can't breathe. And I love moments like that. They're so rare, but you hold a very special core memory for me. I don't know if anybody out there has seen this, but you did a panel with the rest of the Monty Python people in Aspen.
Yes.
And there was a bit that you guys did that involved an urn of Graham Chapman's ashes.
That's wonderful.
And for anybody who hasn't seen it, you were regaling a story about how audiences weren't laughing at a particular joke and the urn gets knocked over.
Yeah.
And the ashes go everywhere. Everybody is scrambling. There's a dustbuster that comes out that's screaming about. And John is just in the front trying to block it like this. And when it's over, you just go right back into the conversation without missing a beat. That moment was one of those rare moments where, because I wasn't expecting it, and I was laughing so hard I could not breathe.
Isn't it wonderful when you laugh like that? And it's when you're 15 and 16 that you laugh like that. It's hard later on to laugh quite like that.
Yeah.
And you don't. I think in your teens you laugh as you never laughed before. But that moment is hysterical. When I do my stage show, it was actually filmed. Did you see the film?
Of the stage show?
Yeah.
I have. It's been a while, but I have seen it, yes.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. And what is so funny is that when the urn is knocked over and the ashes go all over the place, about 30% of the audience do this. They just can't stand to look at it. It's so shocking. But it is an absolutely wonderful moment.
It's one of those just awkward moments that you don't know whether you're supposed to laugh or you're supposed to be like petrified or mortified or horrified over it.
Well, there's always that problem, but it depends where you are. You see, I'm fairly safe because I'm in Rhode Island. You know, you've got Brown University, and you've got very few people. I've been signing this morning, very, very few people on the spectrum. And that really varies from city to city, because a lot of people at these kind of events are on the spectrum, and it means an enormous amount to them, you know? They absolutely love it, and it's very important that one has a little moment to talk to them, because the organizer always trying to run people through as fast as possible, make as much money, but the important thing is those little moments of human contact, you know? But here, there's very few on the spectrum. Most of you can spell your own names and vote for Harris, you
know? Are you relatively new to doing conventions like this, or have you been doing them for a while now?
No, I hadn't heard of them.
So you are...
I did one in London about 5 years ago, and it wasn't very well organized, and I didn't enjoy it very much. I didn't, but then I did one or two more that were well organized, and I get an enormous... They're tiring, because you just, I was just in Brussels, believe it or not, in Belgium, and I did 300 photographs. That's a lot of photographs. So you're tired at the end of the day. But the lovely thing is you're spending time with, they're all nice. All the people here are nice. I've done a lot of these. I've never seen an argument or a fight or anybody getting upset. People are really nice and kind and funny, you know. They wouldn't be here buying tickets for me if they didn't think I was funny. So it's not like, oh, you know, when you're young, you go out in front of an audience, you've no idea if they're going to like you or not. And sometimes they don't. And now, God, that's embarrassing. You know, because comedians talk about dying. You know that. When they go out in front of an audience and they don't get any laughs at all, they say, I died. And that's because it feels like dying. You don't get actors saying, I died, because actors are just saying lines, you know what I mean, and they're not trying to be funny. So they sometimes people are very bored by what they do, but no actor's ever said, I died. But when you try to make people laugh, and you really don't, it's a terrible feeling. I had believe it or not, a guru who was called Sogyal Rinpoche. He was an incarnate Lama, a Tibetan Buddhist, and he wrote a wonderful book called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, which has sold more copies than any other book on Tibetan Buddhism. And I knew him quite well. He was very special. He was on a different level to us, but he was a wonderful man. And when it came out 10 years later, they did the 10th anniversary of his book, he said, will you come along and just introduce me to the audience? So I met him beforehand, and when you're with people at that level, there's something in you relaxes at a very, very, very deep level. And I went out to talk to these 800 Buddhists there were, and I went out and I looked at them and I said, hello, Buddhists. I thought it was funny. Absolute dead silence. I've never done such an unsuccessful joke in my life. 800 Buddhists looking at me, thinking, you prat. I've lost the thread of my talk, but maybe I should be standing for president. It's funny, isn't it? There's two of them, one after the other, and they both gaga. I did a tweet recently saying Marga goes gaga. And there he is talking about Cary Grant in a swimsuit. Have you heard that one? Or the one about all the dead birds, right? Or the one about how he'd rather be electrocuted than eaten by a shark. Have you seen this? And this guy is going to be the commander-in-chief of the biggest army in the world. And he's out of his fucking mind. And then they expect comedians to get laughs. I liked what, there was a wonderful guy called Will Rogers.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful guy. He started out doing rope tricks. He could do, and that was what he used to do in vaudeville. And then he started talking to the audience, and he became a sort of very wise. Everyone loved him, and he was very funny. But he said something once, which I think sums up the present situation. He said, "I don't make jokes, I just point them out." You know, that's all you can do at the moment.
I feel like I don't know how to transition from this conversation. But I'm going to attempt it anyway. So, you know, on the topic of comedy, you know, obviously you have Monty Python, you have Fawlty Towers. BBC and British comedy definitely tends to be a little bit different. When it came to American audiences, were you surprised to hear how well embraced things like Monty Python and Fawlty Towers became by the American audience?
It's a very good question. You see, the truth is the real difference is not between English and American. I mean, there's some jokes that you can't understand because the words are different. And oddly enough, it's mainly everyday objects. You see what I mean? I remember going into a CVS and asking for a face flannel. Well, that's a washcloth. So that's kind of stuff. It's not about a different sense of humor. It's just not having the same frameworks of reference. But the really big difference is between the coasts and the people living on the Great Lakes and the rest of America, because the rest of America struggles with irony. And it's an extraordinary thought. You know, they really don't. I had a brother-in-law. I was married to Connie Booth, who wrote Fawlty Towers with me, and she had a brother, and he was from the Midwest, and he would talk like this to me, and I always knew about 2 minutes ahead what he was going to say. It wasn't that he was stupid, he was just extraordinarily slow. And it's a fascinating thing to think that there are some people who simply don't get irony. But I knew this because I was a teacher. When I was 18, I was teaching 10-year-olds, and I discovered early on they can't deal with sarcasm. You mustn't use it on them. It's a weapon that they have no defense against. But then by the time they get to 14 or 15, then they've grown out of that period and are now able to get irony, unlike the people in the Midwest who never grow past the age of about 12, intellectually speaking. You see. Now, if you think that when somebody says, "Oh, I could kill you," if you think that is, serious and nasty, and you don't realize if someone says, "Oh, I could kill you," that it's not meant. If you don't know the difference between those two meanings, you're in terrific trouble. And then there are people who don't understand metaphor. They don't understand that you can say things with all sorts of different meanings. You can mean the opposite of what you say, or you can say something that is clearly not supposed to be taken seriously because it's said in humor, or that it's a more flowery way of expressing something. I mean, I was at this stage when I was 12, I couldn't understand poetry. I used to think, why don't they just say what they mean? So if you're at that level of simplicity, then you're not understanding an awful lot of the communications that are going on between people. And so to allow the people with very little sense of humor, no sense of irony, to allow them to decide what people with a sense of humor are allowed to enjoy is ridiculous. It's like asking colorblind people what colors should be on a color chart when there's some colors that they can't even see. You see what I mean? So I think it's very important when you get the extreme woke, not the good woke, because the good woke is good. That's about accepting people, and it's about kindness, and I like that. I mean, the good end of woke is fine. The only thing I have to object to with the good end of woke is the fact that those people seem to think they invented kindness about 18 months ago, you know. It's been around quite a long time, you know. I think that Jesus Christ would probably think that being kind and inclusive was a good idea. This is not a revolutionary new political concept. But when you come up the other end of work and you have people saying you mustn't say this or mustn't say that, that's because they don't realize that there are many different shades of meaning. And so I'm feeling very strongly at the moment we have to protect this, because you were talking about laughing at the ashes. It's wonderful for us to laugh like that. And I've been thinking about this because some of you know a TV sitcom called Fawlty Towers. Yeah? Well, you see, that's now on stage in London. We've taken 3 episodes and put the 3 episodes together, and I helped to direct it. And I was sitting in the box on opening night, and I was watching the audience because they were making me happy because they were rocking with laughter. And the thing that I noticed afterwards, everyone's in a good mood. Everyone's just smiling at people and having a nice time and going home happy, and that doesn't happen so much these days, you know. It's because we're all so anxious, and the anxiety is because this one thing I learned. I wrote 2 books about psychology and psychiatry with a psychiatrist, and I think this is fascinating. He showed me a special chart that's produced by actuaries. Those are the people who calculate what premiums you should be paying on your life insurance. They have to be pretty good at guessing how long you're going to live, you know. So somebody said, you know the difference between an English actuary and a Sicilian actuary? And the answer is that an English actuary can tell you roughly how long people are going to live, and a Sicilian actuary can give you their addresses. I only heard that a week ago. I like it. But I think I don't know where I am, but I'm just saying that laughter, I believe, is really important for us. And I'll tell you a serious story. I was in Sarajevo for a film festival. Yes, you remember the Sarajevans, the Bosnians, were in Sarajevo. The Serbs were up in the hill, and for a period of 4 years, the Serbs were lobbing shells down, sitting there with telescopic-sighted rifles, shooting people crossing the street for 4 years. The European Union did nothing about it for 4 years. And I said to these people who lived through it, I said, how did you get through it? And they said, you won't believe this, but we found an underground car park, and we converted it into a cinema. And after dark, when it was safe to move around, we used to go to the cinema and watch comedy. And I was very proud that a lot of it was Python. And I said, well, and he said, well, when we came out afterwards, we felt better. Nothing had changed. You see what I mean? There was no diminution of the number of shells that were coming in, but somehow, because they'd been there laughing together for an hour and a half, they could actually cope with their dreadful situation better after they'd been laughing together. And I had was it San Jose? I was doing a Comic-Con, and a woman came up to me to get something signed, and she leaned forward for a compliment. I leaned forward. She said, "I want you to know that my husband and I had a daughter who was murdered." And she said, "We were unable to sleep for a long time, and then we found that if we watched an episode or two of Fawlty Towers after that, we should get some sleep." See, something happened when they laughed that just moved them to a part of their mind where they could cope a little bit more. So there's a lot of people who have thanked me for getting them through difficult periods of their lives. I'm not telling you this, not because it makes me a very wonderful person, although I am. But just to explain how important laughter is, how important humor is in getting us into a better frame of mind to go through life. And there's a lot of woke people who are trying to stamp it out because they don't understand it. It's not because they're bad people, it's because they're not able to see the range of meanings that are out there. So I just wanted to say that because I think a lot of the time the woke people are gaining a great influence on our society by telling people what they should laugh and what they should not laugh at. I don't mind woke people telling other woke people what they shouldn't laugh at, but they shouldn't be telling people who are not limited in their sense of understanding meanings. Ooh. All right, here's a joke. Why do the French have so many civil wars?
Why? I don't know. Why do they have so many civil wars?
It's so that they can win one now and again. How many men does it take to defend Paris? We don't know. It's never been tried. Why do Italian men grow moustaches? It's because they want to look like their mothers. How can you tell that a Turkish plane has landed at the airport? It has hair under both wings. I got in a cab once in Sweden. They drove me from the airport. Oh, we've offended a woke. Oh, no, it's not. It's just a Roman Catholic. It's nice to have so many of you on our Supreme Court. I really want 6 out of 9 Catholics. We've never had power like this before. What has the Pope decided you should decide today?
You said you were a teacher before you got into comedy. What made you do that switch?
Because I got into comedy by accident. I was at a school studying science because I was reasonably good at maths. And I slowly began to realize that the problem was I wasn't really interested in science. And then when I got to Cambridge on science, I thought there are people coming to Cambridge to study science who were actually interested in it. And it struck me that that gave them an unfair advantage. So I kind of, I had to wait for 2 years, and during that time, I decided to study law, and I was asked by my old headmaster to go and teach at a school, and I thoroughly enjoyed teaching these 10-year-olds. But the first thing I did learn was that you cannot control a class unless you know the names of all the people. Because if you say stop talking there, they will say I wasn't talking, so. And then when I got to Cambridge, because I was a bit bored studying law, I joined the society that did sketches and entertainments like the Hasty Pudding. And in my last year, we put on a show for the parents who came up, you know, for the degree awarding ceremonies. And so an extraordinary thing happened. We were doing our little show to entertain them, and a guy from London who was a promoter or producer came up to us after the show and said, "I want to put your show on in the West End."
Oh, wow.
And we were astounded. We said, it's just a little student review. And he said, "You don't know how funny it is." He put us on, and we played in the West End for 5 months. At the end of which we all had jobs in show business. We stopped being teachers and advertising people and lawyers in my case, and we all joined the BBC. So it's a long story, but it's a very strange one.
I just have to say thank you for that. And just as you know, I myself am certified to teach in science, and I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, really? Good. And the next.
Yeah,
Yes,
come on
up, darling.
Hi, Mr. Cleese. My name's Kira. Thank you very much for taking the time to come out. I really appreciate it.
Shut up. What's your question?
Alright. So I was really lucky to see Holy Grail for the first time at a drive-in theater when I was young, and I also grew up with you guys and the Horrible Histories as well. So I was wondering if you had seen any other groups of British comedians coming up, or is that quite difficult nowadays with social media? I don't feel as much there's like a group connectivity when it comes to comedy.
I think the enormous advantage of having a few people to work with is that it is so difficult to be funny, and it's so embarrassing when you're not. And the reason I started working with Graham Chapman, there were 2 reasons. One, he was very funny. I mean, you know, when he was paying attention. But he was very funny. But the other thing was that if Graham Chapman laughed, it meant the audience was going to laugh. Because I would write things, I'd think, well, I think it's funny as anyone else. But I discovered with Graham that if he laughed, the audience was going to laugh. So it was absolutely wonderful. And if you're surrounded by a few people who think you're funny, then you can form a little group. And it's much harder, I think, than trying to make it on your own.
Thank you, sir.
Okay?
Yes.
Good.
Nervous. Hi.
Hi. Why are you nervous?
Oh my God, you're right there.
You silly person.
question.
They're not going to sneer at you and say, "What a stupid person."
No,
Why-
they-
why did
and it's
you-
okay if they do.
Well, they might. I suppose they might. Okay, all right.
So
you
I
can
know.
be
Thanks for
nervous,
pointing that
yeah.
out. No. So my question for you. I loved Fawlty Towers. Did you? I submitted the sign as part. This question as part of the panel. So I'm hoping you may already have been asked this.
It's probably in here, but feel free to ask
Okay,
it.
I would
yeah.
love because I have to know.
What are you talking about?
So on Fawlty Towers, the sign would always change, and it was always a sarcastic comment or take on the name of Fawlty Towers of the hotel. Were you in charge of that, or what was?
No, it happened largely spontaneously because we were down filming. You see, we used to film for the series for about a week, and then we would go into the studio and we would record over 6 weeks, 6 episodes, and we would play into each episode the filming that we'd already done. And they gave us this sign with letters, you see what I mean? And the guy did Fawlty Towers, and then 1 or 2 of the other people. And I remember it was, I can't remember his name. Well, it was Robert was his first name, and he was on the props. He did all the props. And he said, "Can we make a few anagrams out of it?" So everybody came around, and we started coming up. I thought Farty Towels.
Farty Towels was the brilliant.
It's the funniest, you
Yes,
know?
it was. So.
And those flowery twats. But the whole team, not just the cast, but the crew were all coming up with these anagrams,
And
we
had
were
fun
just
with it.
changing them on the board and then shooting them. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I do believe very much that if you can get people involved creatively,
Yes.
it's a tremendous motivating force. And this is what I did when I was co-directing the Fawlty Towers stage show. I said, "I'm not sitting here giving you orders, because we're all intelligent people, and I want to use all the intelligence in the room not just the director's intelligence. And what happens is everyone starts coming up with ideas, and when those ideas are accepted, they feel good because they're more of a part of the production than they had been before.
Yeah.
That's the way to go, and I can't stand directors who have a vision. And I'm not mentioning Terry Gilliam by name.
Thank you very much. I love
Terry's
that.
very nice, but I did say to him once, the only reason that you go to film festivals all the time is that it's the only place that you're recognized.
Thank you.
Hello.
What's your, Mr. Cleese, what's your favorite role in any project that you worked on?
In what?
Your favorite role in any project that you've worked on?
Oh, I liked the role of Mary Queen of Scots. Particularly the scene where she has her head chopped off. Because I wasn't sure that I could get a laugh on that, but in fact I got a huge laugh. I think that's an outstanding part. I think the most enjoyable acting that I ever did was when I did a BBC Shakespeare, which nobody knows about. I did Petruchio. Yeah? I know it. Petruchio in Taming of the Shrew. That was 1980, shortly after the conclusion of the Second World War. And that was the best, because I was working with Jonathan Miller, who was an extraordinarily fine director, and what was so good about him, he made you feel...
Uh-oh.
I don't know if anybody missed that. Could you stand up again, please? A round of applause for the blue gentleman. So your question, I'm sorry, but my favorite role, yes, that. And I also loved being the cat in Fievel Goes West. You ever saw that one? Because my wife and I are obsessed with cats, and she can actually speak feline. And we've recorded their conversations when we leave the house. We've recorded them, and she has translated their conversation. And we're putting them into a book, and they're very funny, because one of the things they can't understand was they're watching out of the window is a man throwing a stick for a dog. And one of them says, if he's trying to throw the stick away, why is the dog bringing it back to him?
Thank you.
All right, you can go.
I think we have time for, unfortunately, we have time for one more because we're going to have to wrap things up.
Oh, I want the person with the funny ears to ask me questions. We'll have two more.
Okay.
You, sir.
It's very short, if that helps.
Hi there, my name is Billy, and
I'm not interested in your name.
fair enough.
Egotistical bastard.
I get it. I'm a teacher too, and so my question was already asked, so I had to shift gears here for a minute. How about when you sit down for entertainment to watch a show or a movie, what do you enjoy to watch these days?
I think when Trump said that Kamala Harris was a woman of low IQ, that was the biggest laugh I got from. Can you believe that? Can you believe it? All right, that's your turn. Now, come on, Mrs. Ears, what are you going to ask?
Hello. So
Hello.
my question is about Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which my mother, who's with me today, showed me when I was 9 years old, and I ran around
I
my
was
Catholic
much
school.
too young for this.
Well, what's even better is I ran around my Catholic school playground quoting it. And South Park. I was very popular among administration. My question is about Tim the Enchanter.
About what?
About Tim the Enchanter.
Oh, yes.
I read
No,
somewhere.
is the answer. Everybody thinks that I forgot the line. Is that what you're asking?
That was my question.
Yeah, and the answer's no. No, I didn't forget the line. He was always called Tim, and the reason he was called Tim was that we were looking for someone who was very alarming and who could call explosions, and I wanted to give him a feeble name, the sort of name that you give to someone who really is a bit wet. And so I called him Tim, because I had a friend called Tim who was very, very wet. And it's the first 3 letters of timid. So it has that kind of connotation. So he was always called Tim, and I didn't forget it, but I built it up with that big pause to try and make it more dramatic, and then said, Tim. But an awful lot of people started the rumor that I'd actually forgotten what the name is. The answer is, it's a film. If you forget something, you do it again, you see.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, ears.
So we have sadly come to the end of our time. I want to encourage you guys to make sure go visit John at his table if you haven't already. You have created another core memory for me, and while I feel like I didn't really do much during this panel, this has been another highlight of my miserable panel career.
What do you mean another?
Okay, the only highlight of my... Ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for Mr. John Cleese.